Welcome to Stop, Collaborate and Listen. In this episode, we'll unpack practical ways smaller businesses can drive growth without reaching deep into their pockets. Today's product businesses are fighting a battle on many fronts, with lingering effects of high inflation, high raw material costs, supply chain uncertainty, which doesn't seem to go away, and an expensive labour market. But with customer retentions and sales tactics combined with a ruthless optimization across the three biggest lines of spend, labor, inventory, production, small to medium firms can outperform both their peers and the larger players that dominate the market. This from one of our customers, I think, summarizes what a lot of businesses are experiencing right now. And this is in quotation marks, if you like. From a customer point of view, we know that a lot of people have been hit with cost of living pressures, so they're looking for lower cost options on the market. Finding other ways to stay competitive beyond raising prices has been essential for us to stay in business and ride out the difficulties. So that's why we're here today. Hopefully we can impart some practical knowledge from our day-to-day to the wider listeners. Who have we got to help us unpack some practical ways SMEs can drive growth when the operating costs are high? Please welcome. I think I've done this in first name alphabetical order, but don't test me on that. Darren Glanville, head of UK and EMEA for Fathom, which is analytics and modelling software for SMEs and accountants. Phil Oakley, MD of Outserve, a zero app integrator. Thomas Laird, MD of Salt of the Earth Deodorants, and Neil Keegan, manufacturing and operations specialist. Quite a room. Welcome all. Let's get straight into it. What I try to do with the first question is if everyone can keep it very short, then we get to hear each other's voices and we know who's in the room very quickly. So what's the one thing that has gone up in price for you the most in the last 12 months, whether that's personally or in business? Let's start with you, Thomas.
Container ships. So shipping containers in has gone up massively in the last year. Not quite as bad as its supply chain crisis peak, but it went down a lot last year, and this year it's just gone through the roof again.
Yeah, and it has been bad in the past, and sort of the last 3 or 4 years as well, hasn't it? It's interesting that it's gone up again. Anyway,
I think it's all that.
We'll come back to that. Is everyone else getting the lag on Thomas's movements? Your wife, where are you, Thomas? Because your video is sort of lagging a little bit.
Oh, okay. I am just in the office, so it should be a good connection, but it can go up and down. Do you want me to restart and join in again?
No, that was a lot better. Let's just monitor it. Carry on. Phil.
I think I'll go for the personal one then. Like many others, my mortgage has gone up. And I'm seeing that obviously within our team as well across there. And I think from a business point of view, our salary cost has gone up, and probably those two things are connected.
Yeah. Yes, Darren.
I'm going to say the same as Phil. I think as an individual, you see it where it really hits you in your wallet, and that's mortgage payments, interest rates on mortgage, cost of energy is creeping back up again. We're seeing that after a stabilised period, so that's making things go. And I think there's then leading on to other things. There's the spectre of what's going to happen with tariffs in the US, and I think that's the other thing that's on people's minds right now.
Yeah. I want to come on to talk about that, Neil.
Well, as the last in line, everyone else has already stolen my thunder. I was going to lead off with container costs, which, the continuing political instability is really playing havoc with the whole kind of global freight market. But the one that I'm going to latch down on after that is energy and labour costs. In manufacturing, energy is always a critical factor, and it kind of like drives right into the heart of the cost of goods that we actually pay for. Energy, how we obtain it, how much we're actually paying for it, is a source of contention wherever you go in the world.
Great. I think that paints a really vivid picture for everybody. I'm gonna. So that was kind of contextual. I want to dive first into some questions around the workforce, and we've already touched on that, so that's great. So quite a generic question. I'll see where it goes, and then I'll dig in if we need to. So how do you drive growth and boost profit margins without increasing your headcount? Very generic, but designed so. who wants to go first on this one? Thomas, I think we'll go back to you as you're living and breathing it. Well, and Neil is to a certain extent as well. Yeah, go for it.
I think probably over the next 5 years, AI is probably going to be the big way of keeping headcount down. Some of the stuff you can do with it already is quite incredible. And I think it's really going to change the productivity of the workforce going forward as a collaborative tool to reducing a lot of the manual, the annoying tasks, and also bringing in some new ideas and improving overall output from companies.
So can I get you to elaborate on that? What are you, if anything, employing now? And then what are you thinking is coming down the line for you?
At the moment, we're using it quite a lot. It's probably my most used app, and I used it, for example, to prepare for this. So I uploaded my notes onto the ChatGPT and said, what do you think looks good? What do you think looks a bit ropey? And it comes back with some suggestions, and then hopefully I've got some better answers to do with it. I'm also very bad at writing emails, so it does help me speed up my emails too. And then
are you using Fixer?
No, ChatGPT.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, carry on, sorry.
And yeah, in the next 5 years, I think filling in Excel forms, I think a lot of that could be automated through AI. I don't find ChatGPT particularly good with getting information correct and those type of things at the moment, but going forward, I'm sure they'll get that sorted. So, monotonous tasks where you're filling in the weights and dimensions of pallets, that could potentially all be done automated through AI.
Very nice.
Yeah. I'll really agree with what Tom's said there. The big one's going to be kind of AI. The classic one when you talk to people in my world about improving productivity, it's always reducing the kind of friction and touch points that you've actually got in the kind of end-to-end supply and information chain. We're at a moment where kind of AI is a very new thing and a very unknown thing, and people are still figuring out in a lot of ways how to actually work with it. And the immediate impacts have been all the areas that Tom's actually touched on, where people are writing or collating information, which it's kind of really just the entry level for it all. Everyone thinks of ChatGPT as the kind of only game in town, but there's a lot of work going off around it. I read a really interesting article this morning on Medium linking to what someone's actually doing with Claude AI. And the things that people are actually doing with this are kind of quite staggering already. And it's only going to build as people get used to it. I mean, there's, multi-step desktop automations, process optimization, there's advanced decision making that kind of goes in there. There's APIs that are already kind of like being connected into it as well to allow better connection between different applications, particularly on kind of business information and competitive analysis. And there's a whole bunch of things over kind of advanced decision making that are actually being built out and developed inside there. A lot of software companies are already using it. Canva and Replit are two of the kind of poster boys for it at the moment. But there's a huge capacity and potential to actually streamline a lot of kind of manual back-end processes that people are just spending hours slogging away on Excel sheets, and people are going to move more into a space where they're managing information and being decision makers rather than actually collating and creating themselves. And this is going to have a massive impact. But the counterpoint to that is, particularly for small businesses, training and developing these models normally needs a big information set and a reliable information set. High quality, consistent information in the same format is something that most SMEs are very bad at. So this is going to be a bumpy road as it actually moves in. It's not just going to be a straight kind of one-shot deal. But it's going to be really scary, exciting, interesting to actually go on the journey and see how it pans out over the next few years.
Yeah. I mean, we could talk. Maybe we talk a little bit more. I wanted to. I'll come back to you. But the two poster boys you said, what their names again?
Canva and Replit. Replit's a kind of software development tool, and I must admit I've only played about with it a little. Phil's probably more familiar with it than kind of what I am. It's a bit like a development environment. It does various languages. It's used in web development. It's used in Python development. I'm persistently finding my eldest boy kind of playing around on it, and he's much better with it than me. I've made some flailing attempts in my kind of middle-aged.
Because we're boomers, Neil. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Boomers.
Most of my attempts at software are flailing. But yeah, it's a really interesting tool, and as a platform, it's developed incredibly quickly, and it seems to be very functional. But a lot of the software companies, because they don't seem that there's two things in a lot of software development. A, the tools offer themselves up to automation a lot more easily, and because of the way that software engineers work, you've inherently got this modularity and blockingness that allows you to automate easily. And I think this is the area where we're going to see these tools actually come in first. As you get closer to the physical world, things get more complex, and it'll take longer to permeate through, but it will happen eventually. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this happens. You know, the kind of software engineering web app people, they're the ones that are going to see it the first. And we're already seeing the impact in a lot of tech businesses. But as we actually move closer and closer to people that are actually doing physical things and moving physical things, it's going to become kind of a slower adoption rate, particularly for manufacturing processes where you've got some form of statistical process control involved. There's a huge potential there, you know, particularly in industries like food, where people are combining ingredients, and you know the ingredients are not always consistent. Flour's always got different hydration rates and so on, and according to what temperature the water is, and yada yada yada. AI's got a huge potential to actually be able to make active decisions in line in the process, and that can reduce time, can reduce waste. And those are all kind of key points. But the thing is, for it to actually get through to that level is going to take a number of years, because there's the thing about the flexibility of the tool to be reset and adapted, which this kind of agility component is always something that's a big thing for SMEs.
We've got brilliant. So much there. Who wants to pick up? Bill?
Bill, go for it.
Yeah. And I think, obviously, you know, when we think about supply chain and small businesses, you know, clearly AI, well, you know, the opportunities for the future is fantastic, but I think, you know, it is incredibly challenging for small businesses today to see what they can do with it, to understand AI policies, to work with their teams and their staff. And I do think that certainly at the sort of manual task point, there's still so much we can do with automation. Just basic automation. You know, we obviously do a lot of work with integrations with Zero and Unleashed and things, but I'm thinking tools like you know, Microsoft Power Automate, Shopify Flow, the things that we're still doing some basic manual tasks that actually doesn't need that much intelligence. So when we think about doing, you know, more with less and not increasing our headcount, we're just looking at some of the basic tasks that people are doing, where actually we can get quite, you know, complex algorithms to work out, and just on an if this then that basis. But like I say, these I think with so many people having, you know, Office 365 and having Power Automate licenses and being able to just you know, introduce certain tasks, or if you're a Shopify user, and as you know, many Unleashed users use Shopify Flow is really bringing some great bits of automation into things that are taking people so much time. And when you sort of get your heads around automation again, that's definitely when AI can start stepping on top of that. We'll see Copilot, which is obviously Microsoft's AI on top of Power Automate. Shopify's building, you know, AI tools into things, but just getting some basic automations. And I think to go, actually, I'm doing this over here, it's taking me this long, I've got a person to do it. And I mean, every time we have an order like this, they have to do that. And every time I see, you know, we have to keep looking at stocks. Like, there's so many things you could do just to save people time and become more automated and more efficient. And of course, do more with less. Grow without hiring more people, or hopefully keep the same, even today, keep the same amount of people and get them doing better things, more income generating, more customer facing. Stop doing the manual tasks, which just basic automation can do. Start talking to the customers.
I think that's a really interesting point, Phil, because I think the natural fear is AI is going to replace roles, where actually the conversation needs to be about AI. Those firms that are using AI will replace those that aren't, and they will become the natural successors within this. And I think the other juxtaposition to this is when you look at this and you see how many SMBs and other firms have adopted AI, it's still just scratching the surface. They're still just using the stuff around marketing and generate me a quote or generate me 3 Instagram posts using Canva, which is great, and it leverages that. But I think we also don't think about how customer buying behavior is changing, and we're living in an attention economy, and how can we really leverage that when we know that they're already researching those companies, your companies, behind the scenes before they make a purchasing decision. So let's leverage that AI to take that to the customer and answer the questions. Marcus Sheridan is just someone who comes to mind with the book They Ask You Answer, and AI, I think, is perfect for that. And really leveraging that, because we know it costs what, 5 to 7 times to create a new customer as it does to sell more to existing customers. So I think that's a really simple way that firms and businesses could really leverage that to the full effect.
We could spend a lot here. If we do have any time, we might come back round to it, but I'm very aware that we've got a lot to get through. So I don't know, in this section of with labour or workforce, is there something? Has anyone got any experience of outsourcing? We were going to have Phil Peters from YF on here, but Thomas, do you do any outsourcing or have any support, or are you all now in-house?
So in terms of manufacturing, or in terms of
any.
Yeah, so I mean, we used to outsource manufacturing back in the day, but we found it was really, really difficult to get the quality and the price that we wanted. And we had a few bad experiences, and we were just like, this can't go on. So we made the jump and brought ourselves some manufacturing equipment. And it was, it's a learning curve. I think we're going to go into that a bit later on. But yeah, I think for us particularly, having manufacturing in-house does give us a level of control. I think there's some things where if we do have marketing agencies that we rely on, and they tend to be multifaceted skills, which wouldn't be a full-time job for us. And so we're quite happy to outsource things like that. But anything that requires a full-time role, we tend to prefer to have in-house, because it just means that person becomes more of the team. And there's a lot more that goes on in the office. There's a lot more ideas sharing. So we do find it works better in-house, but there is definitely a role for outsourcing for us as well.
I've got some drilling going on above me, so I'm having to mute off. Hopefully you guys can't hear it. Okay. Let's move. Let's move on to manufacturing as you're talking about it. So actually, we'll come back to you, Thomas. So talk us through the decision. Talk us through some of the nightmares you had, I suppose, and then talk us through how you brought it in house, and then the learnings there as well.
Yeah. So when we first started, we were cooking stuff up in tea urns in the kitchen. And then once that became too onerous, we found a outsourced company, and they did our bulk manufacturer. So we have kind of 2 processes going on. We manufacture the bulk product, which is like the liquid deodorant, and then we have the packaging process. And so we were outsourcing the bulk production. We had a few batches came in, and they didn't pass our quality control tests. And then you've got the problem where you've got no stock to sell, and that's almost the worst problem you can have in a business.
Yeah.
So we made the decision to bring it in-house. It was a steep learning curve. We had to design the manufacturing line ourselves without any real experience of it. And the equipment comes in, they drop it on your front door, and they're like, here you go. And I was like, well, where's the manual? And you don't get a manual. And I was like, how do I plug it in? And they're like, well, it doesn't come with a plug or a thing. You've got to get the electrician to do that. And I was like, oh, okay. how do I clean it? Everyone cleans it differently. So we literally had no idea how to use this thing. And I think it took weeks of being drenched in deodorant to kind of really understand how to use it. But then once you kind of get to use it, you get the processes in place, then actually it is really good. And we've got a really good team who do our manufacturing at the moment. Obviously, equipment goes down all the time, but we try and keep good maintenance schedules in place. We we do keep a lot of buffers in our system, so we have lots of room for things to go wrong. But it's really nice to be able to walk down from the office and see the products being produced. So there's kind of a nice element to it as well, and it's nice to have all that in-house. And when people come and visit us, that's the part of the company they enjoy seeing the most, the production line, because no one really sees them in the UK as much anymore. So everyone's quite shocked to see the machines going. So it's been really good for us, I think.
No, I have to applaud what you've actually said there, because it's kind of I sit with a foot in both camps. It's kind of like I've done a lot of outsourcing and a lot of in-house manufacture as well, and I've also dealt with the issues of machine setup, and kind of everything that you've played to there. Just kind of like I'm just looking at my notes that I prepared for this call. The things over quality control, supply chain control, they're all the key points why people choose to actually make in-house. And you're never really going to get away from that. And also, particularly if you've got some form of IP in what you're actually doing as well, this is another layer of protection. It's yours and it's close to you, so you know exactly what's going off. And again, you can build huge amounts of operational synergy between your R&D that can cut time to market, which in markets where there's a fashion element or there's a seasonality element, which are all the typical drivers for kind of reshoring or nearshoring, it's a huge component, and it can lead to kind of a better, more agile business. But there is this kind of fixed overhead cost, which is the classic kind of critique. You have the people, you have the machines. If sales go down, you still got to pay for them. You still got to maintain them. And there's all the stuff on the back end, like the cleaning, the maintenance. I'm not sure, Tom, what level of regulatory compliance you have to kind of bake into your products. I'm not that familiar with how it's put together, but certainly with foodstuffs, there's a whole layer of things that need to go in there about documenting kind of where the source ingredients come from and so on. And you own it all. It's yours to have, and you succeed or fail based on how well you actually execute on that. And there's a skill set that goes around that sadly is much underestimated and much underappreciated in the UK. But the flip side of it is when you go to kind of outsource, if you've got one standardized product that you're going to run for one period of time, you can actually find someone that can make it scale very, very quickly and just, within a few weeks, literally turn it on. But the bit that a lot of smaller businesses don't understand when they're kind of making this decision-making processes, it's not an either or. There's a bit of a quid pro quo. Normally, if you're going to successfully outsource, you have to spend a proportion of your saving on enhanced quality control and supplier engagement and that whole piece to kind of shore up the supply chain and make sure that, the things are being done in a way that you want, and that you're building the data systems to collect information about what's actually being made outside of your building. They're all there to actually allow you to understand and control what's going off. Even large companies suffer from this. I read an article a few years ago where it was talking about Apple's spend on airfares to China for their production engineering team and senior management. And the figure that was baked out at the end looked like the national deficit for a small South American country. It was just absolutely outrageous, the amount of money they were spending. But this is the cost of actually doing it out of house. And, bearing that cost and understanding where the inflection point is something that's not often talked about.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's no free lunch. There's always other things to think about. And we've talked about this before, Darren. Can can we stay a little bit more in this area? So, and I know perhaps Darren and Phil, well, it kind of is your expertise as well, but I just want to get talk to the other two a bit more. So you've made the decision, you've brought it in house. How then do we get the absolute most out of that? The uptime. Thomas, you talked about having buffers. What have you put in place since bringing everything in house to kind of, maintain that level, those peak production levels?
That's a very good question. So I think we've learned a lot over the years. I mean, we started really in-house production in 2013. So we have built up over the time. We've got ISO. We have quite a lot of other standards that we have to achieve, and there is a lot that goes into that. And I think one of the things we learned coming out of COVID was sometimes you can't get stock. And so we took a conscious decision then to build in extra stock buffers. So we do keep a really high level of stock for probably a manufacturing company. So we tend to try and keep 3 to 4 months of raw materials in stock, and then 3 to 4 months of finished product in stock. The reason we do that is because actually the cost of us running out of stock is a lot more. The disappointed customers is a lot more than the cost of holding the inventory and the risk of holding the inventory. And particularly during the supply chain crisis, we just couldn't get hold of stock. And so it gave a really good buffer for us to mean that we could keep the machines running by having raw materials and packaging in stock.
How does your market break down with retail versus, D2C? Can you just give me that detail?
Yeah, D2C is quite a small part of our business. I'd say like 5%. And
that's me. I'm in that 5%.
Yeah. Perfect.
I'm an amber sandalwood girl myself.
Oh, nice. Good choice. Good choice.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then we do quite a lot internationally as well, so that's a good percentage. And then obviously retail and Amazon and companies like that forms the rest of it.
And where can you buy it? It's Holland and Barrett I saw announced, and
yeah, Holland and Barrett, Amazon, Ocado, Waitrose, Boots, Whole Foods in London, lots of independent pharmacies and health stores around the UK. We also ship out to the Netherlands. That's where we just got the Holland and Barrett listing, and we're also do a lot in Eastern Europe, South Africa, Saudi, Hong Kong, Malaysia. So we're kind of we send quite a lot out around the world at the moment, and it's a really growing part of the business. But yeah, we've also spent quite a lot of time really looking at our production line and how we can optimize it. We have a lot of SKUs, so we run them all on our main line. So we've had to build in a lot of flexibility into our line. So some of our machines can be swapped around to change products, which was an interesting design. And we've spent a lot of time trying to optimize it. Some of our staff has done lean manufacturing training as well. So we try and hear feedback from our staff as to what their bottlenecks are and how we can improve them to drive together. And we're also quite keen that we can't run people at full speed for a whole day. It's just not going to happen. So we try and build our production outputs based on, a normal day rather than everyone working at 110%, which just isn't reasonable. So that's just some of the things we've been doing.
Really good to hear. Coming back to you, Neil.
Yep.
Can you give us what do we need to do if we're looking at, I mean, I know it's different products, different lines, but what's your sort of top 3 things to keep that production rate up?
I'll probably hit on one that Tom didn't actually kind of touch on, but he mentioned it in his first answer. One is preventative maintenance. Everybody kind of like, they get a big order in, they're busy, and like the TPM actually falls away, and then the machine breaks, and then everybody panics. Remembering to actually build time into your schedules to make sure that you do the right maintenance, you do the right cleaning, you do the right inspections is absolutely vital. And then there's this whole thing of actually kind of really getting close to your process, really looking at where the bottlenecks are. I'm going to, for the moment, ignore the kind of inventory kind of management, raw materials side of things, but getting close to the process and finding out where the kind of like bottlenecks are and where things can be modularized. You know, the classic one inside of lean is, you know, the great example is kind of the SMED thing from kind of way back in the 60s, single minute die exchange. And essentially he's talking about if you have a process block that needs to change, like adding a color or a fragrance or a different car door or a different panel, that this can be switched in and out as quickly as possible, and that you actually find that consistent standard thread in what you do. And if that thread isn't adaptable, find ways to make it adaptable. And that may be through kind of the application of a new technology, or it may just be doing something different with your people and talking to them and thinking about things in a different way. But going through this cycle, it's continuous. And unless you're actually kind of going down there on a daily basis, talking to your people, looking at the product, constantly asking why, you know, Tom mentioned like some of his employees have done lean training. Again, all of the things like 5Y, Gemba walks, these are all really basic tools that are actually in the entry level, but they're absolutely vital in building the practice. I mean, I'll cycle back around on the inventory level stuff. Inventories of raw materials are going to be kind of a constant problem over the next few years. A lot of the kind of like manufacturing models that people kind of move towards, you know, the classic JIT lean model is the one that everyone goes to as the right way of actually doing things, but it's not. It's one way of doing things and it fits for a certain kind of business. For other businesses, the economics and the way that they actually put their products together and the kind of raw materials that they actually use, you have to create your own answers. And I think this is the thing that's underestimated in manufacturing, that a lot of it is about actually finding your own secret sauce. It's about understanding your product and understanding your material supply chain and making your own decisions. When I talk to people about this, I often say that Western businesses traditionally have had a very low success rate in implementing lean policies. And that's largely because we see it as a kind of toolkit, like a Harry Potter magic wand, where I've done a lean course, therefore I'm going to do this, therefore everything is going to be great. And it doesn't quite work that way. All lean is just it's a series of tools to look at the world. It doesn't actually give you any answers in itself. But what it does is tell you the themes and perspectives that you need to adopt to create your own solutions. And that's an agile process. It changes according to what the world's actually doing around you. And it's also an ongoing process. And I think that's kind of the journey that Tom's on about. And like, I love so much the kind of way that he described the tea urns on the counter, because that harks all the way back to a lot of kind of early industrialization where, you know, guys like Olds and Ford, when they were actually putting the first, you know, linear manufacturing lines together, literally had dollies with cars sat on them that were being towed along on roller skates. Some of it starts out in a very simple way, and it builds and builds and builds through iteration into these more complex systems that you see in kind of modern factories. And it's a continuous journey, you know, and I'm sure that if we cycle back on this in 5 years' time, Tom's probably going to be talking about the robot at the end of the line and the AI that's actually managing the temperature in one of the vats. Mm-hmm. But it is that kind of thing, and that's the thing that really keeps this area fresh for me and exciting and interesting.
I love this manufacturing nostalgia alleyway that we go down.
There's an old saying, nothing's new that's under the sun. And in a certain way, it isn't. It's just kind of like people find different interpretations of the same solution over and over again. You know, and I think kind of like, it's interesting working with software engineers, because they kind of, this is a new industry and a new kind of way of working in some ways, and to a lot of people outside of it, it's a bit of an enigma the way that software is actually created. But when you actually break it all down, they're doing very similar things to people are doing in any kind of manufacturing business. They're modularizing, they're stabilizing the modules, they're understanding inputs and outputs, they're making sure they've got validation processes, they're connecting the pieces together, and then they're testing. And it's all very similar to what actually takes place in the real world. They even have Kanban cards, which is, I take great delight in reminding friends of mine that that's something that literally just means piece of cardboard that used to be put in a box of bolts. It's just the reinterpretation of existing learnings and how you actually apply those going forwards.
Brilliant. I want to bring in Phil, because obviously you're servicing multiple manufacturing customers here. So if you learn anything on the journey of peak production and what other customers are doing?
I think it's also worth saying that maybe a slight change over the last few years is even these small businesses now have access to so much data, so much more data than they used to have. So, everything now that people are using things like Xero for years, but systems like Unleashed and Shopify and again, like just marketing data, all this data that they've got in their business. And of course they can go and get more relatively easily with the tech tools. And it's then trying to actually have the time to look at their data and understand it. And I think this is the bit we're probably missing now is, people have spent the time and invested and put systems in and they've got data, but what are they doing with it? Are they really looking at it? To understand, and as Tom has said, stock outs and overstocking, are two big issues that you don't want either of them. But to become more profitable, to understand cash flows and how you're going to become more efficient, you need to know those numbers. And if you're looking at outsourcing compared to things that you're doing in-house, it's really getting the numbers, doing that number crunching, and really understanding with absolutely the pros and cons of quality control and everything else. But I would really where we are working with our clients is especially when you've had those systems in for a while, is okay, what's the data telling us? What's your data telling you about your business? What bits of data are you missing? What do you need to make those strategic decisions? Maybe you haven't got the whole picture, all of the data you need. Let's start addressing that so you can start making these decisions. But really, it is. I think so many people are so caught up in the day to day, all the managing and the operational side of the business is can we stop and actually look at that great data you've got? What can you learn from it?
Darren, heavily nodding, go.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to take a second because I was transported way back to one of my first jobs.
Let's go back.
When Neil said Kanban cards and production lines and TPM and all that kind of stuff. So I remember T cards and production planning with T cards. And I can say now the production manager of those lines knew way more manually in his head than perhaps some people do now. He knew every setup, strip down, retool, when the maintenance was going. He would just hit you with this stuff. So I had a nostalgic moment. So thanks, Neil, for taking me back to that. And I used to get shouted at by the production manager.
I'm not sure whether that was a good thing or whether kind of like I'm just being called old.
It's triggered some trauma because I do remember some of the arguments with that production manager about customers who want something just in time. But that's a separate issue, and I'll move on from that. I think Phil's right. We're surrounded by data. Data is everywhere. It's ubiquitous. It doesn't matter whether it's sales data, website data, financial data, inventory data, production data. There's a sea of it out there. And businesses, I think it comes down to two things: clarity and confidence. That's what business owners want. They want to see that information presented in a way that's easy to digest. They can make confident decisions, but they also want options. And I think we're starting to see businesses now, certainly post-pandemic, certainly post issues with supply chain, really start to look at risk mitigation. And again, I think with the geopolitical world the way it is at the moment, we're also now introducing other elements into this, such as cyber. What happens if our businesses are affected by a threat actor to do that, and it disrupts our supply chain? So they're now starting to measure risk in that business. What's the likelihood and what's the impact? Let's have those options on the table. And just listening to that, it's like, well, what are your KPIs? What are the production runs? How many times are you stopping the line in a month? Why was those lines being stopped? How many planned maintenance runs have you got? Again, it's just leverage the power of the tools that are available and your advisors and people who work with you to really understand that. That's where I think businesses will weather any storm coming out of this.
So we've sort of segued into the next section, which is great, which I wanted to talk a little bit more about inventory management, which we have already done. I appreciate that. I think one of the interesting things is with all this data is having it visualized for you. Like, so we're talking about SMB here and making, and you know, we as a company are fast approaching, you know, ERP for smaller businesses, and whatever that is and whatever that looks like. And but a small to medium-sized business, you know, they're multitasking, sort of a handful of people doing multiple jobs. You know, the data is there, but you know, how is that data being visualized to help these non-experts get a grip and actually be able to do something with what they're seeing? Does anybody want to pick up on that? Nobody.
Bill, do you want to jump in on that one before me?
I think, again, you know, I think small business, like I say, they are short time. So we really, you know, these visualizations need to float to the top, the most actionable things a lot of the time in the short term. And that could be, you know, dead stock. So you need to be looking at that dead stock and not ignoring it, because it's, you know, you've just got cash tied up in that stuff that's never going to sell. It's probably costing you money because it's in a warehouse and it's on a shelf. Or, of course, stuff that you're going to run out of. So your run rate is going to mean you've got sales and then you've got stock outs. And I think these are the bits which the systems can be so great at, is that you've got so much data, but what is the important stuff I've got to look at this morning and this week and this month? And this morning I've got to look at things that I can't run out of this because I'm going to have unhappy customers and lost sales. And actually, you know, I can't hold enough of that one because I've got shelves full of this dead stock. You know, I need the systems to point all this out to me quickly, clearly, and it's all about actionable data, I think.
Yeah.
I think the other point in there as well is, you know, one of the things we built on really at the beginning are kind of like the, you know, a big cost that all small businesses worry about is fixed overhead, which includes buildings. And if you're actually making your own stuff, you've got a finite amount of space. And like, if you've just got dead stock or kind of excess inventory, you've got nowhere to put things, you've got nowhere to work. And that again breeds more inefficiency in what you're actually doing. Keeping the decks clear and keeping everything at the right level is vitally important. And, you know, building on Phil's earlier point about kind of people not using the tools that are actually there. The amount of people in small businesses that for their inventory, because they're not involved in something like food and bev, where you have to track dates and sell by dates and so on, they'll have a pile of wood and they don't know when it came into the building. They don't do any kind of batch control because there's no kind of market requirement to it, but they don't understand how it can be useful in managing these things. You know, and again, thinking back to a previous kind of engagement that I actually had, the board piece is kind of a really interesting one. You know, wood, you wouldn't think there's any need to track the batch dates. But if you have large sheets of flat wood and leave them in a warehouse for 8 months, they warp. You put them on the CNC machine, you get bad product. You know, all of this stuff is kind of useful. All of the tools are actually there, but people don't actually use them. Even simple things like reorder points on kind of a basic ERP system, which have just been there for years and years and years and years and years. It's amazing how many people don't actually have a scheduled review, reset the reorder points, adjust them according to what their SNOP actually is. They put something in when they set the system up and then ignore them forever and a day and don't use the automated tools to generate the buy list. You know, and all of this is work that's just a time suck and consumes people's energy.
Thomas, you're nodding there. Did you want to?
Yeah. So we've been using Unleashed, I think, since 2013. So we've used it for a long time. And I was trying to think, what are the key things for me as a business owner? And I think it's so easy to find out for us what our best selling lines are and track them over time. And that again helps the inventory thing. But also gives us a clear look at sales. And I think particularly for me, it's, you know, we can see what the cost of our inventory for sales was. So we know our gross profit very easily and very accurately every month, which is key for us to make sure that we're doing the right things as a business. And I was discussing with one of my colleagues the other day what we would do without Unleashed. And we were both saying we probably need about 3 or 4 extra people just to deal with the sales orders and stuff like that. And some of the questions it answers straight away, like you put an invoice, you put a sales order on, and you know immediately whether you've got the right stock or whether there's any potential issues with the order. And that's pretty invaluable for us. So I think having that level of information at your fingertips is really, really incredible. And I can go back, I can remember the days when we didn't have that kind of information and everything was kind of on a spreadsheet, or we had to go down and look, physically count in a warehouse how much we had. So you know, it's a massive, we're so lucky in this day and age to have so many tools to make our lives easier.
It's nice to talk to someone who, obviously, we have a very, very old written case study from which I'd like to talk about coming to video, perhaps with the new facilities. But the fact that you can remember that far back and now give it an ROI, and obviously there are probably other things, if you gave it 5 minutes, that you'd be like, oh yeah, how all these other things as well. Sorry, Darren, you're going to say something.
No, I'm just going to, I think it's really, you know, sales, it's again, listening to Tom there, it's great seeing what the GP at the margin is, which is awesome. But, you know, what was the cost of acquisition? What's the lifetime value? How are they a returning customer? What's their average order value? Are there certain, there's so much that we can really dive into with that. And I think the other thing for businesses is, again, in sorry to kind of sound like it's the geopolitical situations and supply chain, but what's our cash runway? If things went south tomorrow, how much cash runway have we got? And again, you know, we had it with the budget a few weeks ago with employers' NI contributions. We've seen people around, you know, I've heard of people selling their businesses to avoid capital gains. You know, these things are critical decisions for business owners right now. And they need to have the data to support the decision so it doesn't feel that it's knee-jerk and it's much better thought through. But yes, okay, NI is going to go up, but how can we support that, fund that from within the business so that we can keep our employees happy and meet our regulatory requirements as well?
Can I add another point in here to this conversation? So, I mean, we talked a bit in this section about kind of existing tools and so on. A lot of the smaller businesses that I've worked with, one of the classic debates is kind of like, you know, as soon as you say kind of ERP, there's this kind of white look, and they imagine it's this kind of glacial-like thing that needs to come rolling down the hills at them, that's going to kind of take half of their staff and cost them hundreds of thousands of pounds. And, you know, the point over Unleashed is kind of a really good one there. It defines a good best practice workflow. All the right tools are in there. How you actually apply them is down to you and your business. It's just got the right amount of the right things in there, and it's easy to actually self-serve. And that's one of the great things about it. One of the challenges for a smaller business is if they actually decide to, you know, massively customize, you know, they believe that, you know, if it's not invented there, it's not right. What they've got and the way that they're doing it is the absolute truth and the absolute best way. And they're not actually open to changing to kind of reduce the friction in their processes. Or if they want, you know, some kind of bell and whistle that isn't really adding to that bottom line, they lean towards more customizable, adaptable solutions. But sometimes there's a price that's actually in there, which is the cost of actually doing that customization. Now, for a business that's got high volume throughput, that's large, there is a benefit to this. But for a smaller business that really just needs to actually understand the inventory, what the sell-by dates are, what the customers are actually doing, what the sales pipeline looks like, all of the things that you need to get right before you can do anything else. Sometimes actually that thing of taking a less featured or less adaptable tool and working around that is the right decision to make, because the cost of adoption and implementation and the benefit that you actually receive from that is much greater than dealing with a system that requires a huge amount of work, a huge amount of adaptation to actually go in there. I think Phil has probably got 1 million case studies where he's taken Unleash Zero, probably another kind of CRM solution. There's quite a few out there, and just plug them all together to actually create a really great value add solution. It's been able to be implemented in a matter of weeks, versus something where you're authoring scripts, you're writing custom automations, it goes on for years, and you're still finding bugs at the end of it and pulling them out. There's a huge case for kind of, be humble, start with the basics, and just build that basic data pool that Darren's talking about that actually allows you to make effective decisions.
Phil, I mean, like 100% what he's saying. So I think this idea is particularly with an audience, with small to medium-sized business audience, this idea that you might want something that resembles ERP, even though you don't know what ERP is, but actually something that's more locked down, that is sophisticated but not too malleable. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think it is that next step. And let's face it, we're probably not going to be able to find a small business anywhere in the world, certainly not in the UK, who isn't using a spreadsheet for something. Yeah. And start. That's where you start, and that's where we start when we go. Come on, get your spreadsheets out, get your dirty little spreadsheets out, because everybody seems to end up where. And spreadsheets are great, and data is great, and it's great to look at it. It's where they're actually using a spreadsheet to be a system, to actually be operational and processing stuff through it and putting stuff into it, not just reading the data, exporting data into spreadsheet to manipulate it. Actually, it is a system, and that's why that next step is definitely something more like an Unleashed. To go from a spreadsheet to ERP is not what SMEs need, I don't think, most of the time. And even Unleashed has lots and lots of functionality and lots of additional stuff, but we just need to start with some core processes of the stuff that's taking you so long and causing the challenges. And again, it's all about understanding those pains in the business, what's taking so long, what's causing the issues, and is this the right tool? But yeah, where if you've got a product business with orders and you're still using some of your core processes in a spreadsheet, I think that would be a definite red flag where we'd be starting.
There goes the fire alarm. Brilliant. I think I've got a little timings in front of me, and we're bang on schedule, so that's great. I want to move on to talk about sales and marketing. So the idea being that we've now tightened our operations, and we've looked at people, we've looked at processes, we've looked at inventory, production, and I think I've got the right people in the room. I know I've got the right people in the room to talk about this. So a recent study from Search Engine Land shows that digital advertising spend has increased by 6% year on year across paid search. That's probably just the last year. Forget about the years before that. And then 13% year on year for paid social media. We're certainly spending more in the paid social media space. Whether it's repeat business or winning new customers, producers now have to get more creative with their strategies to drive cost-effective sales and pipeline. So the question is, what can businesses do with their marketing efforts to sidestep these rising costs? Have you tried any old school tactics to great effect? I know, Phil, you as a business are doing some interesting things, which I'd like to unpack. And Thomas, tell me about, let's start with this underground out of home in November. So what drove you to make that decision?
That is a good question. So it's not like anything we've ever done before. And we actually got approached to do it. And I was like, oh, no, it's not really what we do. And then the person who runs our PR was like, oh, no, I think you need to think about it. And I spent some time thinking about it, and I thought actually it's quite a prestigious thing to do, to have posters in the underground. Actually, there is value in it other than just people seeing it in the underground, because I can shout about it on other platforms as well. So it gave me a chance to shout about it on LinkedIn so our customers can see we're active in marketing. Gave us a chance to shout about it on Instagram. And I kind of felt a blog on our website, and I kind of thought, well, you know, it has a value just outside the poster campaign itself, in showing people that we're getting out there, we're in people's minds, and we're doing these big campaigns. And actually, I think it was really successful for us. It's really difficult for us to know, because we sell multi-channel, we sell everywhere. We've got no idea whether someone's seen our advert and brought on Amazon, or brought in Holland Barrett, or brought in Waitrose. It's really difficult for us to track.
Was there an uplift year on year for you around that time then? I mean,
well, it was only a few weeks ago, really, so it's very difficult for us to be able to know.
Did you have a call to action on the poster, a specific one?
Yeah, we put which stores we were available in, so hopefully that was a good, call to action. And so I don't know whether it's successful or not, but it felt successful, and a lot of our retail buyers saw it. We told a lot of our retail buyers about it, and I kind of felt from that side it was successful as well. So it's weird, because you kind of have to market the fact you're doing marketing a lot of the time, because otherwise people don't know you're doing all this stuff. And so what we're trying to do at the moment is tell more stories from inside the business, because for years we would go about doing lots of things. We would kind of win awards and be like, oh, that's great, and we'd celebrate for a couple of minutes in the office and then get back to what we're doing. But then I realized, well, we're not telling anyone about it, and actually part of the marketing thing is getting out there and saying, we've won this, we've done this, we've been to this exhibition. So we're getting a lot better at trying to tell those internal stories, and about the fact we've moved as well. We never told people about the fact we've moved in the past. So we're trying to tell a lot more stories from the business to get the word out there. And I think that's in an area where the cost of digital marketing is going up specifically. You need to tell better stories, and you need interesting content, and there's a constant demand for interesting content. And so we're trying to do our best to get ourselves out there and kind of create a point of difference.
You might not want to answer this question, because it's actually personal research. I'm actually starting to look at out of home for us. Mm-hmm. What was the cost? Would you want to talk about that? Of one poster in the underground for 2 weeks. Could you give us that detail?
So we had 10 posters in 10 traffic locations. I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to talk about the cost, but I thought it was reasonable for what it was. We got a good deal.
What else do you do in your marketing mix to hold up as a comparison?
So we do we do social, we do Google, do advertising on Amazon as well. So a lot of digital marketing. I think it was probably less expensive than the money we spent on digital marketing that month. So it was a bit of a punt, but I think it's something that got people talking about us anyway. So obviously you saw it and you thought it was worthy of talking about. So I kind of feel from that point of view it worked, but I don't have any cold hard data to back it up. It was just it's one of those things. Of a gamble.
It's funny, I saw I'll come on to you, Phil, because I know you've been doing something similar with events, but Shopify and Zoho, one of our competitors, are also advertising on the underground this season. I took pictures and sent them back to the team, and so we are investigating it, because I think it's more affordable than ever. And choose where you are as well. And there are some massive billboards now with some heavy traffic on the M32 into Bristol. There's this massive, much to the Bristolians discuss, there's massive digital billboard, which is very striking. And I read everything on it when I'm coming back into Bristol. But yeah, it's interesting. What I liked about the Shopify one was beautiful. It featured a customer of theirs, beautiful kind of photography of the product of their customer. and right at the bottom it had like a search bar with what to search for. And I can't remember the 2 or 3 keywords, but they're obviously trying to encourage people to put in a couple of keywords as a response to the ad, which then hypothetically means it's slightly more measurable, and you can maybe get some ROI out of the campaign, or a QR code on a poster can sometimes work as well, depending on the product and what you're trying to achieve. But Phil, you're doing you've been going to more niche events, and then you also report from the event. And do you want to talk us through what you've been doing? Because you've kind of stepped things up this year, I feel.
Yeah, very, very conscious decision over the last couple of years, and it's a bit like other people mentioned. Sometimes you got to do the things that others won't. For me, and again, collecting data, I really want to go places where the customers are. So whether it be the Amazon Seller Conference, or the Bread and Jam Festival, where you've got challenger food and beverage brands, you're really just putting yourself at the heart of where all these businesses are, and that's a great way to get data and to talk to people, and partners and collaboration, and we are again really stepping this up, and also bringing it. I'm here in London today. There's a lot of things in London, but there's great cities and places around the UK that probably are neglected in events and people coming out. So I think in 2025 we're looking at the options of road shows, going to Birmingham, Leeds, Newcastle, Manchester, and because there's some fantastic businesses out there. And in post-COVID and digital, I still think there's huge benefits of getting people together, seeing people physically, and getting lots of data. And I think Tom mentioned, for us as a business to be seen in different places, and it's about repeatedly being consistent and turning up, and you're not going to go to one event and it changes your business or anything. It's about repeatedly keep going, keep turning up, keep understanding where the right places are, where are the right businesses going, and what can they do as well to learn. I think the businesses really benefit from going along, networking, learning from each other, collaboration, talking to different people, huge amount of value. And I know it's tough, especially when you've got a small business. Get yourself out of your warehouse, out of your factory, out of your warehouse, and go out there and learn some stuff. And
what Thomas was saying about then reporting on it. So you have then I have seen obviously because I follow you, but there's this massive uptick in the content that you've been producing at these events and before these events and after these events. Darren, you do something similar with Fathom, don't you? I mean, you are the event queen, aren't you?
I wouldn't necessarily say the event queen, but you have to go where your customers are, and I think you have to meet them. You have to engage with them. I think it's a great way to really get to know. Know, like, and trust someone, build that rapport, understand their issues, what they're facing, and I think nothing really does that like events, just to build that trust. But equally, I think it's more about a broader community. Who else do we know that is experienced the same pain? We're all having these conversations with like-minded businesses every single day. We may sell slightly different things, we may produce them in a slightly different way, but fundamentally we're in the same storm. I won't say we're in the same boat, but we're all in the same storm. So let's leverage that and connect. It's the power of network. I mean, Phil's seen the real power of that, and how businesses have really leveraged his services and implementing that as well, and moving beyond it. And I'm sure Tom's seen the same as well when he goes to and meets his customers out in the wild, as it were. I did bring a smile to my face when you said about the underground, because I can think there's a great social video of the tube on a Thursday night and advertising a deodorant on a packed tube on a Thursday night coming out of Victoria. I think that would go down really well. So congratulations on doing that, Tom.
Thank you.
Just before we leave this topic, it's something that you mentioned in your response to me, Thomas, about the importance of a clear message or a single message. Obviously, it's something dear to my heart. Can you talk us through the process that you went through?
Yeah, I think it's really important to know what your customers want from your product, and to put together a coherent and easily understandable message that you can then relate back to them as a way of trying to get more customers on board. And I think going to these events, that's also a really good way of getting direct customer feedback. I think getting out there and hearing what customers say, that input's really, really important as well. But having a good pitch and a good, clear message for what customers are looking for, I think is really important. And I think I think especially for us, for many years, we didn't really know what we were about, and we had to go through a process of, who are we in the market, what customers are we aiming at, what makes us different from our competitors, and then really focus in on those points and hammer them home in as much of our communication as possible.
Yeah, really important point. So just one more thing before we go on this one. So I've got here, and it'd be interesting to see if any of you've got any examples of this. So the marketing experts among us would say that the things to do with the high cost economy for growth tactics is look at loyalty programs. It says the average B2B firm can unlock £66,000 a year through customer loyalty programs. Also, sales incentives where you steer your sales team in a certain direction or a certain subset that you need to hit, a certain sub-target, and also just personalizing the customer journey. Has anyone got any examples, practical examples of those three marketing tactics?
I think just very quickly, one of them is about events. I think we've traditionally looked at events as an ROI, but I think it's moving beyond that now. It's a return on experience. What is that experience we're getting when we're talking to someone at an event or at an exhibition or a conference? How do they feel about that? And it comes back to what Tom was saying, meet those people, but what's that customer experience that we create? How do they feel about us? And how do we become that trusted brand that they want to engage with continuously? And we can sell more products to those same customers because they believe in the brand.
I think that's a really interesting point. It's like, I mean, this section's a little bit to the side of kind of my area of expertise, but just moving around London on a regular basis, you actually see kind of more and more retail destinations that are actually based on brand experience rather than shifting units. The one that's instantly sprung to mind when Darren actually said that was the if you go down Oxford Street now, probably one of the biggest keynote stores that's opened up in the last 6 months is Intel. It's massive. It looks like something that's landed from space, and it's absolutely packed all day, every Saturday, midweek, whatever. And it's just about getting people to engage with the brand and see the potential. Samsung have got a similar kind of thing out in Cold Drops Yard. There are more and more businesses that are beginning to operate this way and making kind of consumption and experience rather than just taking the box.
Yeah, I know that there's a one in Covent Garden. What's the camera that spits out photos when you take them?
Polaroid.
Thank you. So anything else? Anyone done loyalty, targeting sales team, particularly any examples? It doesn't matter if we can move on.
I think just again touch on data really, and obviously we see many businesses may have a system like Unleashed, which is fantastic with all that sales data, and then they've got CRM systems, marketing, CMS systems. But actually joining that two together, that's where we're seeing people have success. Is actually use that sales data of who are your top customers, who are your best customers, what are they buying, what are they not buying, and let that data then influence the sales and marketing and how you follow, particularly obviously customers. Again, that's where, as we're looking at here, the data is telling us, shift some of that. So much spend is spent on trying to acquire new customers, when actually are we neglecting the existing customers? And the great thing about the existing customers is we have fantastic data, what they buy, when they buy. And then using that data in the marketing. So again, it's just not just a scattergun approach. And this is what we're seeing with more integrations and more workflows is, okay, based on the buying patterns of your customer base, based on the type of customers and everything else, using that data in the marketing is getting a better return on investment.
Are you able to do that, Tom, with what the data that you have? I mean, do you have I think, do you have a newsletter?
Yeah, we do newsletters. We're probably not the greatest with targeted data because, as I said, we never know whether someone goes and buys our product from another company. So it's really hard for us to attribute a sale to a particular marketing effort, which is very difficult. We just look at the trends of whether sales are increasing over time. I think on the customization thing, one thing we do have is a really good customer service team, and they're constantly got their ear out. I mean, B2B and D2C as well. If we're getting, if a customer's got a problem, they always try and answer really quickly and in a humorous way. And they also feed back any issues. So if we're getting a whole load of customer queries about something, then we can take that information and create a blog post on it, so customers don't have to contact us. They can find the information on our website. So we're trying to improve based on that feedback too.
Yeah, awesome. When have you got to jump, Darren?
Very in the next few seconds. So
okay.
Off, so I
had two questions for you, but never mind. We'll come back to it. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Cheers,
Thanks, Darren. Take care.
So let's talk there. So there's one final question, then a quick fire round. So the final question being, how can we avoid the pitfalls of overtrading? So the idea being that, God forbid, we actually do really, really well and expand too fast and we don't have the cash, the inventory, the capacity. Thomas, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, no, and I think there's kind of a link between the last question as well, because I think buffers, I'm a big proponent of buffers. You need more cash than you think you're going to need because things are always going to be more expensive. And I mean, COVID's a great example of when things went horribly wrong for a lot of businesses. And if you were in a strong position before that and you had a cash runway, you have more time to react. If you're running everything to the wire, you don't really have the flexibility as much to react in a crisis. And so building in as much buffers into your business as possible within reason, having buffers on stock because, a ship can get held up in the Red Sea, or, a customer might not pay you on time, or, you might not be able to get certain items as stock because of geopolitical tensions or something like that. There's so many things that can go wrong. And I think as business owners, businesses have to build in buffers to make sure they've got that flexibility to be able to react when things go wrong, which they do.
Yeah, awesome. Neil?
Very much on that line, and building out from the point that Tom's just made about kind of the buffers, the reserves and so on, that loops very, very neatly around to the point that Phil made earlier about understanding the data kind of real time. If you actually understand your runway, if you understand your inventory, if you understand your raw material stock, actually that kind of balancing equation of what the rate of growth can be, what the kind of sales pipeline that looks like, how much can we actually make. It allows you to be proactive with your customers and make decisions about when you can supply. Quite often when something's actually delivered, when something's paid for, it's a negotiation. There are things that can be discussed, and people, if you've got a genuinely meaningful product that's relevant to them, they don't want to walk away. They've got their areas that they'll actually flex in, and the question is whether kind of your requirements and their requirements can be aligned enough to actually make it happen within the constraints. And that is just a pure data enabled conversation. I can't do it this month, but next month I can. And understanding your cash position and your material position is vital in actually being able to do that in kind of growth areas. And, the opposite also applies, understanding what you can stretch out and what you can cut back. Without that data, you can't actively make that decision. You're just rolling dice. And I think this is kind of an area where smaller businesses can actually really improve in making sure that they are building the data frameworks, they are improving the quality of the data, they are actually kind of using tools that may already be inside their business to actually interpret that and understand it better. And actively build it into their decision-making process rather than it being everything a last minute kind of responsive decision with kind of a partial data set that results in the best guess outcome.
Nice. Phil?
Yeah, I think I'll stand in here for Darren, and as you know, it would be forecasting, and there is some great solutions and software now for forecasting like Fathom, and of course so important the cash flow forecasting element of that, especially when you're scaling and really understanding what your runway is, where your pinch points are. There are some really interesting ways that businesses can raise finance or cover periods, short-term financing, lots of fintech solutions and apps that can integrate in to really help you maybe when you are scaling, you do need to get some more cash into the business, because let's face it, the main reason, the only reason the business will fail is because it runs out of cash. While you've still got cash, you continue, and again, it's another reason why to be continually looking at your stock and understand, yes, what you need in buffer stock, but also have you got cash tied up in all that stock that you don't need, and to keep your liquidity and really understand that. We obviously spend a lot of time looking at balance sheets of companies, and generally we see a trend, unfortunately, of a lot more stock on a balance sheet than there is cash. And if you want to forecast into the future and really understand, especially for scale, when you're scaling and want to grow your business, understand where those pinch points are going to be, and start thinking early. If you are going to have those pinch points, if you need to go and get cash, where would you go and get it from? Not the most effective, obviously. When you're doing that under pressure in the short term, you don't always get the best financial deal when you've got to borrow money. And start thinking about that now. Get advice, talk to people, and really understand what's available to you to make sure that if you meet that forecast, what are you going to need? If you don't meet that forecast, what are you going to need? There's questions that continue to need, but if you haven't got the forecast to look at, it's all just finger in the air. Get that forecast.
Question around diving into that a little bit more. Question around data. Like if I'm a new business or I've started to collect data in the cloud for my product, at what point, how many months in, does that actually then start to really be helpful? I mean, so yeah, I'm just trying to think, some of our customers don't take some of our BI product early on because there's no data to look at. Yeah. So at what point does that become useful? How many months in? Yeah, that's the first question. So back to you, Phil. Like, at what point do you go, okay, had you been collecting data for the last 6 months or 18 months, we could now look back, obviously year on year, what did I do this time last year is a really helpful indicator for forecasting, isn't it?
It can be, obviously depends on business style. There's a lot of depends on things here. Obviously, some businesses are a lot more seasonal than others, but of course, even in a 1 week or 1 month of data, you've suddenly got more data than you had before, and that's the benefit. One of the biggest pieces of data when you put Unleashed in is now what you've got in stock. You didn't even know that last week. That's a great piece of data. But absolutely, we're certainly seeing this now. It must be fantastic for Tom to see data back to 2013. I'm not sure, I'm sure the last few years are more useful than probably interesting to look back that far. But yeah, you'll really start to get the benefits of that data if you're looking at it. It's great when you've done the first 12 months and you can see some patterns within a 12-month period, and then try and understand what patterns are there in that second 12 months, and for you as a business, maybe seeing some insights that you maybe you didn't realize. It isn't just as simple as the seasons or when was Easter. Obviously really interesting, we've just finished Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and to compare that window 2024 compared to 2023, and obviously the effect that has had, that wasn't even a thing years ago, and now for some businesses, again, depends on your style and type, and really understand the numbers again, because obviously there's some heavy discounting going on by some, others just some very clever marketing and no discounting at all, but to really understand that, and it is really nice then to see what affects that. But of course, even if you just put that system in last month, you'd be able to very clearly see, okay, what was Black Friday, Cyber Monday to me, and then that's going to be really important again next year when you come back round again to try and plan for it, forecast for it, because of course we have seen many businesses being caught out by a Black Friday, Cyber Monday where they've just run out of stock and missed an opportunity.
We do quarterly research called Manufacturing Health Index report, and the data going into this quarter was really positive across most of our sectors, customer sectors. Lots of people buying lots of stock. There's no lead times are coming down, so there's no issue that there should be stockpiling, but they are. And then more sales orders have gone in than the last quarter, than this time last year on year. So I think we'll have to see. I think this particular Black Friday was very, very strong, and I think you said the same, didn't you, Thomas? You're saying a very strong this year Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
Yeah, and we're in a growth market, so we're very lucky. We see strong sales at the moment. Just to go back to the data question as well, I think it's really, really important to have good data, but you've also got to share that with your team so your team can interpret it, because you might think, oh, this product's doing really well, but then you speak to your salesperson and they're like, well, actually our major customer for this is thinking about delisting some of those for another product of our range. And you kind of need that human intervention from your team as well. So, or this product may look very profitable, but you could talk to manufacturing and they could say, well, actually it's taking twice the amount of time to manufacture as some other products, but that's not showing on your figures. So I think it's really important to bring the team in to those kind of to the data to try and get the proper interpretation, because we always think that a human needs to look over the data and make sure that actually it does make sense and there's not any external things that the data is not recording that we need to take into consideration.
Quite nice full circle. We started off with about 20 minutes of AI and we finished with human intervention. That's what I like.
Well, and it is the same with AI as well. You do need that human intervention with AI at the moment. So,
well, I think that's going to continue to be the case. It's just that movement of people from the actual doing to the managing and kind of, curation and interpretation, rather than it just being kind of, I feed the figures in and I look at what drops out of the spreadsheet. It's going to be that thing of, well, this is the information that I've got and this is the context that I'm seeing and this is how I think we should proceed.
Nice. I know. Thank you. I've got one final question, quick fire round to finish off, and then I'll let you guys go. It's 10:30 exactly. If you could do one thing to better scale in the current climate, what would it be? So, Thomas, one thing.
More AI, I think. It is going to be the biggest thing for the next 5 years. And I think as business owners, you might not like it, but it's coming and you've got to ride the wave, I think, rather than struggle against it. And I think it will be a massive competitive advantage for people that start to get to use it earlier on.
Bill?
I'm sounding like a bit of a broken record now, but it's going to be data. Look at your data. That's the one thing you need to do. And if you haven't got the data you need, look to solve that. Look to understand, is it a system issue? Why have I not got the data I need? But yeah, let's make, data-driven businesses and let's make decisions based on some data.
Neil?
Oh, I'm going to be the complete aging hippie here and go on from a completely different tangent. Mine is, I just wish we could actually reverse some of the nationalism that's growing in the world at the moment. We're seeing more and more fractionalism within the European Union. The UK's put a huge burden on itself in terms of trading with other partners. If we look back over the last 60, 70 years, the one thing that we've actually known is that free trade breeds better economies and, more stable, peaceful environments. And we seem to be tracking away from that at the moment, which is a source of great concern. And I think everyone, that's involved in this debate about how we actually kind of grow businesses and so on. Access to markets is the biggest thing. And whilst we've got, all these national boundaries that are being drawn by politicians, it's interfering with businesses that want to actually just, go ahead, grow, employ people, create well-being in kind of the societies around them. And yeah, that's my take.
Well, I love it. It was like Ben Elton, a little bit of politics there, if anyone remembers
Yeah,
that.
the politics goes into the end. Sorry.
We're all of a certain age, you can appreciate that moment. Well, I know which one might be more doable than the others. Certainly data and AI, I think, might be slightly more achievable right now. But we'll see. Amazing.
Next time I'll bring the sparkly jacket if you want the Ben.
And the red tie. I love it. Amazing. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Darren as well. I knew it was going to be a good one. It was. I really appreciate your time, and have a lovely Friday and weekend. I'll keep you up to date with everything that happens next. We'll chop you up into lots of little bits and pieces and plaster you all over the place, and in a very, very good way, obviously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
More than welcome.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye.
Okay, thanks everyone. Have a good day.